Good morning, everyone. This is Campbell McCrary from Amvest Capital in New York. American West Metals Ltd. today. It's May 31st, 2023. American West trades as AW1 on the Australian Stock Exchange and AWMLF on the OTCQB. Hope you'll enjoy today's program. On-demand replay in about 2 hours after we wrap up. You'll get it in an email. Also, it will be on our website, amvestcapital.com, in perpetuity. And the link that you got originally, that actually works after a few hours after we wrap up for the on-demand as well. So nothing special to watch this later or share it for that matter. Very important. Love to get your questions. So send in your questions right there. Ask a question of management. You like what you see now? You can share this event live. So do note that. You know about Amvest, New York-based specialist investment management and corporate finance firm. And our disclaimer, this call is most definitely, positively, absolutely for informational purposes only. Please read this most carefully. Pleased to have with us today Dave O'Neill, Managing Director. That basically means President and CEO in Australian. So with that, Dave, welcome back. Please update us on what you're doing out west and in northern Canada. So there you go.
Thank you, Campbell, and thanks everyone for joining us, no matter where you're dialing in from. And I thought I would keep this one pretty short, just a bit of an update on what we're doing at the moment, given we're drilling intensively up in Canada at the moment, and a little bit of information on the other projects as well for people that are first-time visitors to this. So thanks again, Amvest, for having us, and get started. And look, this is a photo of where we're drilling at the moment. It's not so warm at the moment, but it's still got a bit of snow around. We're drilling in Nunavut, northern Nunavut in Canada. Fantastic place to work. As you can see, there's very little flat, there's very little trees, vegetation, etc. So it's tailor-made for exploration and development, as you can see. So let's get into it. Again, the disclaimers, a few forward-looking statements here, and that can mean arm waving and things like that, but all based on good scientific knowledge, I can guarantee. So look, just a quick snapshot for those who don't know the company. We're an Australian company, but we have 3 assets in North America and 2 assets in Utah, the very large zinc copper skarn called West Desert in western Utah, very close to Bingham Canyon. Copper Warrior, which is a traditional sedimentary copper deposit near Lisbon Valley in southeast Utah, and the Storm Seal project. It's essentially 2 projects in one, Storm being the copper project and Seal, very high grade zinc and silver deposit in northern Nunavut. And look, the key for us putting these assets together is their location. You know, West Desert's very close to Bingham Canyon, in fact, related to that deposit in terms of genetics. Copper Warrior is only 15 kilometres or about 10 miles from Lisbon Valley copper mine, and Storm Seal's in a historical mining district. And that's a very important, you know, I think, you know, you could be under the N or the A in Canada in this map, and you're in the middle of nowhere, a lot of trees and a lot of forests and a lot of First Nation influence and things like that. So it's you know, key for us is to be well located. We also have existing resources, and we think that underlines our value, which we believe we're very undervalued at the moment, but certainly existing resources should underline the value of any company. We have existing JORC compliant and NI 43-101 compliant zinc copper resource at West Desert. We'll also Seal deposit is quite small, but NI 43-101 deposit up there. And we're working on our maiden resource for Storm, which I'll talk to in more detail. The other thing, you know, grade is king at the moment, particularly in this economic environment. But look, even outside of that as well, grade and high margins should be a key to any project. We've shown that the mineralisation of Storm can form a very high value plus 50% copper product, simple beneficiation techniques, which I'll talk to, and that would, you know, likely give us very high margins on that project. We've also got outstanding growth. So West Desert, Copper Warrior, Storm and Seal, they both have, despite their near-term development potential, also have fantastic exploration upside, which I'll talk to. and a great team. So we've got a great team of mining, finance, and geoscience to drive this forward. We don't need the big companies. We have the team to do this ourselves and the skills, and we believe we can. Quick snapshot of news flow, because it's very important what's coming up. Lots is the short answer to that. We're currently drilling at Storm. We've recently just done a capital raise, which will see us through to the current activity. In the middle of a drilling program, obviously lots of news flow. So we're doing lots of geophysics, we're doing lots of drilling. We're doing environmental surveys up the Storm. We want to get the permitting underway up there, all building towards the JORC compliant resource for Storm, sort of in the October period this year. And then hopefully a scoping study on the beneficiation and the economic side of the resource towards the back end of this year. But we're not doing just the Storm. We've got Copper Warrior potentially getting underway as well. Just cheap drilling down there, but cheap but effective shallow drilling, RC drilling at Copper Warrior, and the West Desert Indium resource to publish as well. Quick snapshot on where we are, and the key things for this slide is essentially, I guess our valuation given the assets, only about 20 million at the moment, so we think we're significantly undervalued. And the other thing is the cash position. We do have the cash to proceed, so we're sitting in a good position and quite well funded to advance that maiden resource, which we think will give us a significant re-rating, which I'll talk to. So Storm, this is a rig on site a couple of weeks ago. A little bit of snow around, but it's an RC rig. It's very effective, very efficient and quick. And this is the first time I've actually done RC drilling up at the Storm. Most of the historical work's been diamond drilling, but the RC is certainly very quick and efficient. So look, I think it's worth spending a little bit of time on this slide. Not everyone understands this part of Canada. A lot of people roll their eyes when you say you're in northern Canada, particularly the Arctic, but I can, I've worked globally. I've worked in Russia. I've worked in Africa, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and North America. And I can tell you that, again, location and being in tier 1 jurisdictions, having access to infrastructure is key. And again, rather than being in the middle of continents, being on the coast, close to railways and things like that, it is essential. And hence the Storm Seal projects are located about 100 kilometres south of Resolute. Northwest Passage is an open sea lane a part of the year, 3 to 4 months of the year. Don't require ice class ships up there as well. We get serviced by the NIAS shipping company. They do about 56 drop-offs during the season up there. So, in fact, one of the ships actually heads down to Cambridge Bay, down the west coast of the Somerset Island there. So it goes straight past the project. So we're looking at potentially getting a sea lift up there this year just to resupply and get ready for next year to save some money, because we fly our fuel in at the moment. So you can see one of the ships in the background there. This is a historical mining district. Polaris has mined for over 20 years. One of Teck Cominco's most profitable operations in its day. So high grade, and again also was able to have that simple processing and beneficiation techniques. Also, Nunavut mine was off to the right of this map. So we're in a historical. This is essentially quite similar to the Mount Isa region of Queensland, Australia, where there's a lot of zinc and copper shows around. It's about 120 kilometres of strike from down our project. We've got over 4,000 square kilometres, a dominant land position. It's all situated on Crown land, so it's very straightforward in terms of getting permitting. And it's also in the Arctic desert, and that's another important point here, is that there's no vegetation. There's very little, obviously, wildlife. It's flat, it's rock, and we actually get less than 1 metre of snow every year. So that's how dry it is. And what that does is give us a lot of good weather days. It can be cold, obviously, and dark in winter, but like every other part of the world, they all face similar weather conditions and constraints. I can tell you, parts of Western Australia, it takes you 13 hours on a dirt road in a car to get there. So this is certainly more accessible than parts of Central Australia or Central Africa. Storm. So what is Storm? Look, Storm's been explored in the past for about 10 years sporadically by different companies, but essentially what it's been found is that two distinct types of copper sulfide systems have been discovered, and the more recent discovery was made last year by the joint venture partnership we have with Aston Bay and ourselves in drill hole 10. But historically what's been known as is multiple near surface but very high grade occurrences. They're named after zones, boring numbers, and we're looking to change them at some point. But look, there's about 4 zones of mineralization in the near surface. Some of these have been fantastic intersections. 110 meters at 2.5% copper is one of those from surface. So you just get a sense of the scale from those kind of intersections. So in the past, they haven't really stuck together and been drilling under gossans and things like that. But the work we're doing now is showing that these zones are in fact continuous. And that's where we're really concentrating on getting some maiden copper resources together. But like I said, this has also got some fantastic exploration upside. That near surface copper has come from somewhere. We drilled one hole last year and we have evidence that there's a major sedimentary copper system at depth. We hit over 100 meters of mineralization. The mineralization looks like it's marginal, so it's got a lot of marginal copper minerals like chalcopyrite. There's bits of zinc and pyrite in there as well, and all of those elements in a traditional sedimentary copper system tell you you're on the margin of the system. So we're very excited about that, and some of the geophysics we're doing this year and also that's been done in the past is pointing to the potential of a very large system at depth. And the near surface also, like I said, there's a critical mass of mineralization that's been discovered here. And I must say that, look, Aston Bay and their partners and themselves before us joint venturing had done a lot of the groundwork here. So a lot of drill holes have been drilled and really, we stepped in with some funding and some different ideas, and we've been really able to show that some of these zones are very quite continuous. So 4 major zones have been identified to date out of about 10 or 12 where there's more sporadic mineralization. That covers over 40 hectares, and so that gives you a sense of scale straight away. Out of the 32 historical holes that have intersected good mineralization, the average grade is about 2% copper, and the average thickness is about 24 meters thick. So that again gives you a sense of scale of what we're thinking about in terms of thicknesses and obviously surface areas and things. And that's why we thought, well, certainly let's go to some of these zones this year and try and find some resources. And that's exactly what we're doing at the moment. So we're drilling at the 4100 zone. You can see it's about 1 kilometer long. It's fairly flat lying, we believe, and the drilling showing that it is. It's about 400 meters across. So you can see by drilling in there, extending that and showing the continuity there, we can quickly add some tons. This is what the ore looks like traditionally. It's mostly comprised of chalcocite, which is 80% copper, bornite, which is about 65% copper, and lesser amounts of chalcopyrite, which is about 32 to 34% copper. So luckily, the main ore mineral is chalcocite, and so therefore you don't need a lot to make some fairly significant grades. What we've shown, the drilling this year at the 4100 zone, we've drilled between some of these existing drill holes and also on the margins. And what is shown is that it is continuous. We have the assay results for drill hole 1 on that upper section, and the grades are very similar to what you see here. So that was a big tick. We've now drilled 17 drill holes into this. Every single drill hole has hit significant copper, and I'm talking significant for anywhere from 10 to 20. One of the drill holes has 45 meters of mineralization in it. So that's telling us that the continuity is there, the thickness is there, and the first hole has shown that the grade's there as well. So everything you want. Technically, we couldn't be happier going into a main resource, 100% strike rate, and the thing remains open in every direction. So we're very happy with that. The geophysics, which we'll release shortly, but that's been very, very successful. We've added extra geophysics to this because it's been such a useful tool in helping us to find new areas and higher grade zones of mineralization. So, that's more news to come out. We've got another 16 to 17 drill holes to release on this. Like I said, the first one confirmed our visual assumptions, and that's really encouraging to know, and hopefully sets us up in good stead for the remainder of the drill holes. Now, look, like I said, the high margin and high grades, and so the other thing I forgot to mention with the near surface ore, that it's all open pittable. So 2 of the zones are subvertical and they stick out of the ground. The 4100 zone, as I was discussing before, is fairly flat lying, but it's probably got a strip ratio of about 5:1. So very amenable to open pit. If we came out with a resource between 1% and 3% copper, that would put us into the top 5% of open pit copper projects globally. The geological model that we're looking at is very close to the African deposits like Mateo, Botswana, which is 30 million tonnes at 1% copper. That asset's worth $1 billion to Sandfire. So you can see the value of having one open pit, again leaning towards those high margin opportunities. But why we believe this will be even more high margin is what we've been able to do with the ore. Like I mentioned before, it's mainly chalcocite and bornite, very high grade copper sulfide. So this is what chalcocite looks like when it's been sorted. So what we've shown is that we crushed the ore down to about 1 inch. We threw it through a simple ore sorter. This is a full-scale sorter from Steinert in Perth, Western Australia. And what we managed to do is make a plus 50% copper product and essentially waste. And that's simply by throwing into the ore sorter using 3D laser and X-rays to essentially make 2 piles. So what that is one of the highest grade copper products globally. It'll go anywhere, travel anywhere, particularly from on shipping routes, etc. And it's with simple beneficiation. So what that means is that, like traditional copper mines, sulfide mines, there's no need for a processing plant, which for a large deposit is anywhere excess of 250 million US. There's no need for tailings dams. There's no need for chemicals and a large typical mining infrastructure. These beneficiation plants are very effective, low footprint, low cost to operate, and low capital to set up. So probably in the order of 10 to 20 million as opposed to 250 plus. So very high margin if you can get these things to work. The first bit of work we did was highly successful. Like I said, we made a 50% product. We're now working on exactly how fine we can get the grind, recovery versus yield versus grade. I'll just point people to, if they remember back to Sandfire Resources, again using Sandfire as an example, their DeGrussa deposit was a very nice high-grade chalcopyrite dominant underground sulfide ore body, but it had this chalcocite blanket that sat above it. They were able to get quite a lot of DSO copper at around 30% copper out of that project, and it made them hundreds of millions of dollars, which they could put towards funding the rest of the project. So these opportunities are very sought after. The product is used very sought after by end users because it's so high grade in copper and very low sulfur that they use that to blend with other lower quality products. So you usually get very good payabilities on these things as well. So this is a fantastic opportunity for us. It's a potential opportunity for us to fast track to production, given its very low footprint. It's almost like a quarry style operation rather than a traditional mine. It's all open pit. It's all very simple, low capex and low opex as well. So this is what we're working for, and that's why we're defining the resources in the near surface in an initial sense, if you will, and to get to this point. But that doesn't diminish the exploration potential, which I'll talk to now. So like I said, we made a game-changing discovery last year. We drilled the deepest hole essentially into the project. We're targeting, if I can just point to this map here is a number of things. It's now looking down on the Storm project area and those 4 zones. The color image behind is a gravity image, which shows density contrasts in rocks. Most of the rocks here are essentially just altered limestone. The only other thing around is generally copper sulfide. So you can imagine that there's 2 different density contrasts there. The other bits of information here are these red squares. They're electromagnetic anomalies, and that technique is used to determine conductivity of the rocks. And again, copper sulfides and other metal sulfides show conductivity. And the purple feature is IP, induced polarization, and that's for looking for other electrical properties, particularly of sulfides, but ones that are disconnected, not connected like the electromagnetics would detect. So all three data sets, you can see that the purple around the 4100 zone is quite large. That's identifying the near surface mineralization. We drilled these EM plates are deeper. We drilled one of these last year on the edge of this very large gravity anomaly. So these red features are gravity anomalies. You can see there's quite a large banana-shaped one sitting underneath the 4100 zone. We drilled that last year and got essentially 100 meters of mineralization. Now, it wasn't strong. It was quite weak. There were zones that are around 2 to 4% copper, but most of it was, sub 1%. But the key here is that it's more marginal style mineralization. So it says that we're on the edge of a system. There's all the right rock types. There's carbonate sediments with holes in it and petroleum, and they're the perfect ingredients for sedimentary copper style deposits. And in fact, this looks very similar to some of the large deposits in the DRC in Africa in terms of their genetics. So we're really excited about this. We've only drilled one hole, and we think we're not bad technically, but we're not perfect. And we think, statistically speaking, one hole and hitting 100 meters of chalcopyrite and stellarite mineralization is pretty unique, and probably a 1 in a million chance statistically. So we think we're on the edge of something. As I said, we're definitely on the edge of this large gravity anomaly. We think there may be a deeper source to this near surface mineralization. And again, that ties in well with these African style deposits where you have large, laterally extensive deposits at depth. Where they crack and flex, you get these high grade chalcocite and bornite mineralization near surface. And again, Mateo and the T3 deposit owned by Sandfire in Botswana is a perfect example of that. So this is very exciting. This is the exploration. This is the speculative side of this project. The beauty of this project is we can drive towards obviously developing Storm and obviously defining resources first, and then developing, getting to cash flow quite quickly, but then also progressing the exploration space at the same time. And that gives us the speculative side and also the very focused and get to the being able to generate our own capital side of things as well. So that's Storm in a nutshell. But look, it's not everything we own. And, I'll just quickly touch on these. We've still got a few minutes left. So West Desert is, like I said, just located to the west of Bingham Canyon. It's identical in terms of its genetics. It's got the same similar porphyry. Obviously, it doesn't have the scale at this point, but it's certainly only 10% of the area has been explored. But what we have defined is a very large zinc, copper, silver, and indium skarn, which sits on a large porphyry. So we haven't explored the porphyry, but certainly the skarn we've identified to date has got about 34 million tons at around 4% zinc. That model was based on most of that's indicated. By the way, 81% of that's indicated. Most of that's based on economic constraints. So we put underground stopes, we put an open pit around it, and anything that didn't make it into those shapes got ejected. So it's a much larger deposit, but we've really just quantified here what we believe is economic. So what it equates to is a low-grade sulfide and oxide open pit. The oxide here, the zinc oxide, is actually very amenable to traditional leaching with a very low acid consumption, which is quite rare, and then a much higher grade underground. This is potentially a stage development, traditional mining project, all the traditional things, traditional flotation that makes fantastic zinc concentrate up to 55% zinc, very high in indium, which I'll discuss quickly in a second, and also a very clean copper concentrate, 32% copper, which has also got silver, gold, and silver in it as well. Now, indium. So this is the largest indium resource in the US, one of the only ones. It's unusually rich in indium, and the historical estimations have shown between 20 and 30 grams per ton. It's about half the value of silver. So, it ranges from, on any particular day, between $12 and $15 an ounce. And there's, been up to 50 million ounces in prior resource estimates of that. So what that gives us the ability to fund essentially the US for about 10 years. We do nothing for the indium. You make the zinc concentrate and it actually travels with it. So it's essentially a free carry and just needs to be processed at a smelter that pays and produces indium. And our closest zinc smelter, which is in Trail, BC, owned by Teck Resources, has exactly that, an indium recovery circuit. So that's a significant byproduct, as is the silver. We've got over 10 million ounces of silver here. So this is an emerging project. We have a maiden resource, but it's certainly not the full story. We've drilled a kilometre to the east of the deposit, and we've hit 3.5% copper and 8% zinc, but below it an existing mine. So the exploration potential is fantastic. Like I said, only 10% of the district's actually been explored. So this is on hold while we do Stormont at the moment, but it's also a strategically important asset for us. Just quickly on Copper Warrior. So this is the third. This is in the Lisbon Valley area of southeast Utah, traditional mining area. You might not be able to see, but some of this ridge is historical uranium mines. So it sits in the Paradox Basin, which is the traditional vanadium, uranium, copper and potash, I guess, basin. Some of the largest endowment globally in those commodities. We're very strategic address. We're only 15 kilometres from Lisbon Valley. They're the second largest copper mine in Utah, and just down the road. Look, they are looking for ore. Their pits are getting a bit on. We think we have the ore. We've got copper sticking out of the ground everywhere. We have just did an IP survey, and you remember I told you that picks up, electrical conductivity, mostly disseminated chalcocite and copper sulfides, and we have a number of anomalies that are very similar in size to the historical pits that are right next to our project. So, it's an exciting project. Copper sticking out of the ground. This is a very cheap test, so we've got an RC drill program fully permitted to commence at any time. And look, we're talking to the Lisbon Valley mine as well, so there may be something we can do with those guys. They're the logical partner on this. They're the closest mine and have all the infrastructure set up. So look for this space, but this is potentially not too far away as well. So that's us in a nutshell. In summary, I'll say, look, we are looking to fast track a potentially significant copper deposit in the Arctic. We're looking at extremely high grade for an open pit operation and extremely high margin potentially as well. So that's what we're driving towards. But we also think we've got fantastic exploration upside as well. So, I think we fit in both the speculative side and also the development side for investors. So, look, lots of news flow to come. Like I said, we're drilling constantly up in Storm. Lots of assays to come back. Lots of geophysical results. So for the next couple of months, keep your ear to the ground. We'll be all over the lots of results and news releases coming out in the next few months. So Thanks. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, Dave, you've got 3 company maker projects and 3 company maker projects, and that's a lot of time and money and focus. Is it accurate to say you're pursuing all 3 at the same time, or some a little bit more than others? What happens when you get a little bit more traction on one versus the other? We'll start with that.
Yeah. Look, the way it's set up at the moment is ideal, to be honest. I mean, we've just done the maiden resource at West Desert. There's a little bit of study work going on in the background. We want to progress a few little, some of the zinc oxide studies, very low cost and efficient. And so it's a traditional mining project with that traditional timeline. So working through the environmental side of things there, walking through the water side, working through the permitting side, and that takes time. And so while that is undergoing or going on in the background, then we can progress the other projects. So look, we believe we can, with fast track Storm, yes, the permitting takes traditional time, but look, we've got the environmental survey starting this year. We have the permitting underway up there. We've got the resource underway. So we're fast-tracking Storm because we believe it, given its potential to be so high margin, could certainly be a fast track for us to getting a cash flow. So that's certainly at the forefront of our minds. And the way the project is stacked at the moment, operationally, it works really well as well. So Copper Warrior, certainly if we partner with Lisbon Valley Mines down the road, then they certainly have the ability to run that themselves. And it takes very little input from us, a little bit of management and things like that. So we can actually do that at any time and progress that at any time. So that's really just, when we decide to pull the trigger and allocate some money to it. So all these things do cost money. We're certainly funded to progress the Storm project at the moment, and looking at other options to progress the other ones as well. So, yeah.
Did I recall with previous owners of Storm, there was a major that was involved for a while, then
Yes.
they pulled out. What can you tell us about that, and how that might guide what you're doing in the future around Storm?
Yeah, so anecdotally, so I worked for BHP just prior to them in exploration, just prior to them joint venturing with Aston Bay on the project. They were up there for a couple of years. They did some fairly regional scale geophysical surveys, which is data we're using now to progress the project. I think they drilled one hole or just a couple of holes that were fairly focused on these large geophysical. One of them was seawater they ended up drilling. But look, their mantra is a lot. They run a very broad comb over things and hope, because they're, the things they're looking for are huge and world-class scale. And so they didn't get out because of prospectivity. My understanding is they, at that time, most of their exploration moved down to Santiago in Chile to focus on exploring the Andes for Escondida style, and most of the exploration went down there. So I think the joint venture lasted for a couple of years, and they'd made a commercial decision to pull out. So that doesn't dim the prospectivity in any way. In fact, it's only enhanced the data sets that they've added to it. So look, I think given the team we have, we've got guys that have been with mid-tier mining companies and major mining companies. We have the technical team to do this ourselves. The only reason I could see the benefit is obviously there's a validation stamp on some of the work you do if you do partner with majors. We're certainly open to talking with them. You get access to their technical teams, which we don't necessarily need. But the other thing is capital. They can provide capital, which is fantastic. But again, they operate on a different timeline. You become a part of their portfolio, which can be quite slow moving at times. And we can be more nimble operating and managing this ourselves. But certainly open to the opportunity at some point.
It's expensive and far away. So I would think at some point, unless you're going to issue billions of shares, you would need to partner. Is that accurate assessment?
It's one way, but it doesn't have to be with a mining company. So the other options are, end users. So I'm specifically talking about metal traders and metal producers. And I think, partnering with those guys is advantageous in a couple of ways. And firstly, you're both working to get to the endpoint quicker. Particularly copper is hot property in terms of its supply chain. And I know a lot of companies are making investment decisions much earlier rather than waiting for scoping or feasibility levels. They're actually putting finance in at much earlier stages, to, particularly with projects that are stacking up. And so I can see, partnering one of those guys extremely beneficial because, again, you're working to the endpoint to get to the endpoint much quicker. So, essentially, they're the people that will take the product at the end. So you can work on optimizing your process to suit them. So, look, there's other ways as well. We're looking at all options, to be honest. We're very open.
So capital structure and then kind of how to pay for these grand plans. Actually, who's in zinc mining? And then are there any other institutional corporates in your registry?
No, most of the top 20 shareholders are management, some high net worths are in there as well. InZinc is the company we bought the West Desert project off. So they're Canadian junior. They have some other zinc assets in Canada. So yeah, that's part of the West Desert acquisition, was about $2 million in shares back then. So yeah, so look, it's very tight in terms of the top 20. I don't think, there'd been much selling and things like that in the top 20, that's for sure. So I'm the largest shareholder. The chairman, John Prinius, is the second largest shareholder.
All right. Going forward, you will need to be raising money soon. How do you envision the next 2 years in fundraising?
Yeah, being an exploration company, we're not making money, and like you said, we're getting really good results, but we're also spending the money as well, and that's obviously, you can't sustain that forever. And so, look, we are looking at partnerships. We're looking at other funding opportunities as well. There's some pretty unique financing opportunities in Canada which we're exploring, and certainly the focus for us is to get the share price up. Obviously, we think we're significantly undervalued. We think that the kind of resource that the initial resource at Storm would be a significant step change, and certainly a re-rating based on grade and the tons potential at Storm, and then obviously the putting out the economics around potential beneficiation processing mine up there as well towards the back end of the year will be potentially another step change, which will obviously display the economics and the margins around this. So I think they're two key things that we need to work towards in the short term. And hopefully, the price on the back of that and the valuation sort of significantly increases. But look, we're looking at a whole bunch of things. So we're not going to be, just restrict ourselves to the simple capital raise on the markets. We are certainly, these partnerships look very exciting and not necessarily a preferred option, but certainly a very nice option.
Where are we with permitting at West Desert?
West Desert so we have, most of the deposit sits on private land that we own. So that we are fully permitted for all exploration. We are fully permitted to do a test pit or exploration shaft. So outside of that, it's, following traditional, we've got the environmental surveys underway. We did one earlier in the year. So it's just, we're looking at doing some water studies and things like that in the not too distant future as well. So that's looking good. We're looking at a potential land swap with Sittler on some of the BLM land, which some of the infrastructure may sit. So that's fairly advanced, and that would open up the permitting process to being a bit like at the state level, not the federal level. So yeah, lots going on in that space.
How does American West envision the capital intensity of Storm versus its copper peers on the Australian Stock Exchange, especially those requiring plants and deep mine development?
Yeah, look, I think the capital intensity is going to be much lower. I think like I mentioned before, the traditional flotation circuits and processing route for most copper sulfide, you're talking upward $250 million US, depending on at the typical million ton per annum type range. And look, I think at that range, given the beneficiation techniques, the very low OPEX that we expect, so the fuel will be the biggest cost, getting fuel to site, and also operating a ore sorter, a crusher, and the mining machinery is going to be a lot lower. So we're thinking the initial capital requirements will be in the order of about 20 million to set a beneficiation type operation up at Storm. So obviously a significantly lower, and the OPEX on that is, like I said, simple diesel fuel. So, you can see the margins that you're talking there. It's not, so look, in terms of the other ASX projects, again, not speaking and seeing all of their feasibility information, et cetera, but it's going to be an order of magnitude lower.
All right, very good. You're in Australia. Your projects are in the Arctic Circle and Southwest United States, Western United States. That's a lot of flying and helicopters and all that. And yeah, how do you manage that?
It's to be honest, it's been a fantastic experience because we have we actually use a geological contracting consulting company that essentially is turnkey for us at Storm. So we have Rocky Prey. He's our Vice VP operations based in Elko, Nevada. So he's been looking after in the past mostly the Utah projects, but he's also available for the Canadian projects that are starting to do the background engineering and sort of study work on Storm. So we have that in-country support. Tom Perry Goodoff, one of our board members, is based in Vancouver, highly experienced in the Arctic, working with Cardi and BHP and Peregrine Diamonds and up in the Northwest Territories and Nunavut. So he's highly experienced. And we've got the team with Aston Bay. So those guys have been working up for the last 10 years. It's essentially turnkey. They do everything. We manage it. We get daily reports. The data's, we've got internet on site. It's 30-man camp on site. We've got an airstrip on site. It's like any other project globally, exploration-wise. In fact, it's a lot more fancy than some of the projects in Western Australia in terms of accommodation and access and things like that. So people shouldn't be put off by its location. Every location in the world has its challenges. If you're not going to find new deposits under cities, you need to get out there. You need to roll up your sleeves. I think one of the advantages of working in, I've worked in Russia, like I said, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and Africa, and you just get on and do it. And there's obstacles in all of these parts of the world. But look, the beauty of Canada and the US, they're tier 1 mining jurisdictions. They're used to mining, and particularly at Storm as well. It's a historical mining district. The people up there are used to it. The communities are used to it, and so are the governments. And so, that goes a long way to making these things a lot easier.
World is certainly flat. So if you could take us to the timeline page as we wrap up and recap what to be following over the next 6, 12, 18 months, PEAs, anything that you're hoping to get out.
Yes, certainly. So timeline, well, certainly I can talk to Storm in the first instance. We're looking at getting the maiden resource out October-ish this year. Could be before, could be after, based on that one. Thank you. And then towards the back end of the year, quite quickly, we want to get the Storm scoping study. And that we're actually, there's a potential that we could make that a pre-feasibility level. Given the amount of information we have on it now, we're doing study work in Perth on the beneficiation techniques. We've done a lot of the back work on the economics and the costs and transport, and we're talking with the shipping companies and the end users of our products and things like that. So all the information we're getting together now for both the resource and the scoping study are coming along very nicely. That puts us in a good position to be able to get these studies out towards the back end of this year. So that's very exciting for Storm. Onwards and upwards from there, but obviously West Desert, there's further metallurgical work going on in the background there. There will be the NEPA and other environmental work kicking off as well for there. And then, obviously the mining and scoping studies for that project during 2024. So Copper Warriors, much earlier stage. We need to drill some holes there and just get a sense of what we have first, but that will follow in time, I'm sure.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you all for tuning in. Love your feedback. Please send that on right now or in the follow-up email. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to anyone, but David, American West. And till we meet again, that's it. We'll be following.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Campbell.